Greetings, everyone, and welcome back to another conversation with Amoda Maa. Hello, Amoda.
Hello, Kavi.
So let's jump straight into this momentous exploration by reading a section from Amoda. Is this from your book?
Yes, it is.
This is from
Embodied Enlightenment.
Embodied Enlightenment, just in case anybody wants to search for it. But I can't remember the page number, so you'll have to read the whole thing. Let me read this and then we'll explore. I'll ask you a few questions and we'll explore this. There is a momentum pulling us toward an emerging future. And this future holds the potential for a collective awakening that catapults us into the next stage as a species. For the first time in the known story of the cosmos, consciousness is becoming conscious of itself. But consciousness can only become conscious of itself through the vehicle of a living form that has the capacity for self-reflection. This includes being able to reflect on the nature of its own thinking and feeling, its own past and future, its own life and death, and on the nature of awareness itself. As far as we know, human beings are the only life form on Earth with this capacity for self-reflection. Consider then the possibility that a new consciousness and a new humanity is birthing itself through you as you. If this is so, could it be that you are the single most important factor in this birthing process? Could it be that you are the vehicle through which existence itself is attempting to recreate itself on the next highest level, and that your awakening absolutely matters? I'll continue. Despite appearances, we are now perfectly poised for a giant evolutionary step forward and upward. Collectively and individually, we are being given the opportunity for an upgrade. Contrary to our conventional way of seeing things, the darkness we perceive in the world and the darkness we experience in our lives is here to serve us. The pain and horror is the grit in the oyster that makes the pearl. It's the catalyst for evolution. When life comes crashing down around us, it's so hard to believe that the darkness isn't an indicator of something gone terribly wrong. But this is not necessarily the deeper truth of the matter. Often, in fact, it is a sign that there's something wonderfully right. It shows us that the dawn of a new light is emerging. As we stand at the precipice of an exciting transition, we have a choice. We either collapse in the face of our challenges, or we do something radical. The former is familiar to us. It's what we've done for millennia. When faced with potential danger, our automatic response is fight or flight. And when danger becomes prolonged and the hope of a brighter future fades away, we collapse into fear and despair. If we are to evolve as individuals and as a species, a new response is required. Instead of fight or flight, we're called to turn around and join forces with evolution itself by saying yes to that which is dying and yes to that which is emerging. Even though it appears as if the outer world of form is breaking down, it's the inner world of consciousness that has reached a crisis point. The invitation and the possibility for you and each of us is to allow your world to be rocked, to let it all come crashing down, to be willing to be stripped bare of all that you think you have and all that you think you are, in losing every notion, every image, every concept that has upheld a sense of me and mine. And this may or may not include the loss of every material thing you think you own. You discover that which can never be lost, that which is immovable and invulnerable to change. Wow. There's a lot in there. Let's unpack this somewhat, Amoda. And I'm wondering what the best place to start is. What's happening? What is the pull? I mean, there's the writing there that's, that speaks to this, very deeply, that the invitation, which is the perennial invitation, is the invitation to awakening from the dream spell, from the illusion of separation. And this has been around for thousands of years. It's the call to enlightenment and awakening. But what's being talked about here in this section that I read is that it's actually interconnected, for want of a better term, with something that's happening on a global level, on a cosmic level, and so let's speak to that a little bit, because it's the same and different, presumably.
Everything is a reflection of everything else. So the personal journey of awakening is a reflection of a more universal impulse to awaken. That in itself demands a bit of exploration, in the sense that what is it that's awakening? On the personal level, awakening is never for the self, even though it appears to be. And in awakening from the dream spell, and we do speak of the self awakening out of the dream spell, we have to, because we're speaking from the individuation, if you like. But in that awakening, at least in my direct experience, and I would suggest this is so, one recognizes that it's not the self that actually awakens. It's awakeness itself, or we could say awareness, that actually recognizes itself through the vehicle of the individual. That's a reflection of a holographic reflection of the totality, essentially consciousness itself, awareness itself, waking up to itself through the manifest. And the manifest includes the individual, it includes the collective, it includes the universal, and it includes the cosmic, the cosmos. The impulse of that, the impulse that we feel as individuals, which seems to be intensifying, in the sense that more individuals are seeking awakening, are perhaps closer to it than in previous ages, is a kind of indication that something is speeding up. The evolutionary impulse to awaken out of the dream spell is speeding up. Now, the reason that I wrote those words in the book was, if you like, from this that I'm speaking of now, and an intuitive sense of that speeding up, not from some theoretical model of evolution, yeah, but really from an intuitive sense that the paradigm of separation, which is not just in the individual who believes themselves to be a separate self, disconnected or fragmented, and therefore isolated, alienated, which is the spiritual seeker's core reason for seeking. It's not just on the individual level, but it's collective, as we can see, because everything's a reflection of everything else. So we can see that separation paradigm being reflected back to us through society, through interpersonal dynamics, through all parts of our world, let's say. And that's what's changing. The separation paradigm, which has reached, in some ways, its peak. Yeah? The increasing division or violence, fragmentation in the world that we see is a reflection of that. And so the individual, the personal impulse to awaken out of the dream state is not disconnected from that. The whole. So intuitively, something is shifting. Something has the potential to shift. Let's call it a potential, because there's no definite outcome. But there's the potential through what we may feel within as separation, as division, and through what we may perceive as separation and division, there's the potential for something new to be birthed. And that seems to be reflected by the increasing momentum, desire, conversation, immersion in awakening. Awakening out of the ego state, awakening out of the me identity, which is becoming more and more part of the, we can call it spiritual culture, but I think it transcends spiritual.
There are many threads or outposts or posts of what you're saying. Number one, the essence of this work that you do, that we do, has what I feel is a purity to it and a simplicity and almost a Zen-like return to just the essence, to try and stay pure to the essence. So this is quite an unusual conversation for us to have about the bigger picture and how it relates to the individual picture. And I know that if you search around on YouTube for any of this kind of bigger picture stuff, the mind gets sucked in, away to the ascension process for the fifth and many dimensions, and for the speculation that the mind comes up with to imagine the glorious golden age of the future where all this darkness has dissolved and somehow we're just living as kind of light beings, which I'm not dismissing that, and I don't know. But I do want to see how that relates to the work that you do, that we do. Yeah, not the dreamy stuff, but actually what you're talking about, the intuit. You're talking about intuiting. So there's no actual knowing on the mental level, but there's a sense somewhere within you. Yeah, let's just talk. That's a sense somewhere within you that something has reached a bifurcation point, which is a term that you've used, and that bifurcation point is suggesting that something either, as true with all bifurcation point, it could implode, for want of a better term, or it could expand, it could exponentially grow, or it could end exponentially or imponentially sort of collapse in a sense. And am I right in sort of just talking about that a little bit?
Yes, I think it's important to say, at least from our perspective, my perspective, that we're not talking about an ascension process or any magical thinking of a collective awakening, a mass awakening that catapults us into a golden age where everything is peace, harmony, love, and perfection. I don't think that's necessarily realistic. I think that's magical thinking. And certainly for myself, I left that behind a very long time ago. Having said that, there is an intuitive sense and also an understanding, if you like, of the dynamics that take place in the individual journey of awakening, where it reaches a peak within, usually, most often through suffering, through internal darkness, through having to face either shadow energies or the inner division that takes place, which seems to be part of the human condition, at least currently. It's only when we reach a bifurcation point within that the possibility of the illusion of that coming undone. It's only then that the possibility is available to us. And therefore, if everything is a reflection of everything else, then this is also taking place on a more collective level. That doesn't mean there's going to be a mass awakening. It means that certain individuals are more likely to awaken within that, and that may transform the world. I don't really want to go in that direction, but I do want to talk about or touch on the intensification that is being experienced by many individuals today,
Okay.
spiritual or not. It doesn't, they don't have to be spiritual seekers, but we can acknowledge that there is increasing fear, anxiety, divisiveness, division in taking positions for and against, and so on, and this is creating a certain friction within the self, restlessness, agitation within the self, and in the world, in the collective, in various aspects. We can also say, perhaps, that there's a kind of intensification of it's kind of everything's amped up, everything's intensified, not just in terms of events, but the energy field, the energy system. There's a certain speeding up. There's a certain which can either become anxiety or restlessness, or it can become potential for the birthing of something creative, something new possibilities. So I think this is around. This is in the field somehow, and some are more sensitive to it than others. And I think this is an indication of the coming to that edge within oneself, because it can only be met within oneself, of either sort of going down the same pathways within oneself of reactivity, of fear, of anxiety, of retraction, of resistance, of rejection, which are all the ego identities, mechanisms, ways of being, ways of responding, reacting. And that creates more anxiety, more tension, more on all levels, physical and mental, emotional. And that's really coming to the fore. And I think it's right there that individuals have the opportunity for something radically new, which is actually what awakening is.
Yes.
Not through force, not through methodology, but through deep insight. And just to add another part to it, I don't think that possibility was available to us in previous ages, perhaps for rare individuals. But if we look back at the educational level, you know, if we look back 1,000 or 2,000 years, as far as I can understand, in those days, whatever system, whatever class, whatever caste you were born into, it was very difficult to break out of that in any culture. And so it was a much more fixed in that way. It was much more limited. So the place where we're at in today's world, whilst there is much chaos and so on, we do have, most of us anyway, the opportunity to grow on a human level, to evolve on a human level, to break out of old dynamics, whether they're educational dynamics, family dynamics. So we also have the possibility, because we have more insight, perhaps a more sophisticated psyche, for self-reflection. And that is part of it's like the intensification of the ego self, together with the capacity for self-reflection, for deep insight, gives us a new opportunity.
Yeah. I think I would certainly hear what you're saying and do, without a doubt, see the pressure cooker is cooking, and how I look at your spiritual awakening, and know that with what happened to me. I don't talk about awakening in the same way, but the for both of us, there was a certain amount of pressure that led to your breakthrough suddenly and my erosion gradually. But both of them had a pressure to them. And so what I hear you saying is, for those who are prepared in a way to look within, to go deeper than the surface narratives, to go beyond the stories, and to not get involved so much in the divisiveness and the separation, then the pressure that's building up, wherever it comes from, however it's arising, whether it's part of some mysterious evolutionary movement or not, here it is. There is a pressure. There is definitely a pressure, and you feel it and you see it, and it's affecting people's sleep and their thoughts and their dreams and their anxiety level and their anger level or their stuff level, and it's sort of inescapable. And whilst it feels uncomfortable, I always see, particularly now, that the possibility of breaking through doesn't come without meeting that discomfort, without meeting that pressure. And if it's there, then it's the invitation is to kind of meet it. And the thing that I was going to really say is that I don't like to talk about the dividing of the world in a way, but there are those who in the intensification are so caught up, are still so hooked in, are still so glued in, that they actually seem to be almost getting more sucked into the separate world, more sucked into the divisiveness, more sucked into the dream, while there are a certain number, an ever-changing number, of course, of people that seem like there are millions of people who are actually at least being prepared to kind of turn away somehow from that funneling into the separation. And there's the opportunity. And I don't know whether that means just some sort of strange splitting of the world or not, but it's there's this is the kind of thing. These are some of the conversations that are being had on very deep levels by some very, very deep, and interesting people. So, yeah.
Yes, all of that, and as you speak, that brings back the flavor of two very unexpected, and I would say visionary states that I experienced a very long time ago. I probably was around 28, 29, 30, I think, years old. And it was prior to awakening, a long time prior to awakening, or even a long time prior to really, a deep inner inquiry, although I was pretty esoteric at that point. But unexpectedly in either a meditative state or just, I don't know how it happened, two things took place within that I can only say were visionary states, nothing to do with the self thinking anything or believing anything. And they were very visceral and relate to this. One was, I think very early on, standing somewhere, and I may have been on I don't know if I was on a ship, but I don't know why I would be on a ship. But anyway, there I was on a ferry or something, or in a car or something. I think I was traveling and I experienced a splitting of the worlds. I don't know what that is. I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know. I just felt almost two realities being created at the same time. And it was very visceral. And it was like one reality was dark and the other one was light. One was, dark was all I could experience, like a devolution. Yeah. And the other one was some kind of light transformation. And that's as far as I got. And it was like, I knew it was something to do with a future possibility, a splitting of the world. What that meant, I don't know. And I left it at that. And then a couple of years later, and I experienced what seemed to be a visionary state of myself, again, sometime seemingly in the future, sitting on a hilltop and looking out over the world. And the world was burning. It was going up in flames and structures were being destroyed. And as I sat there, I could feel within myself a kind of wavering. And if it wavered towards fear, it's as if I got sucked into that destruction and perpetuated the destruction. And if I kept absolutely still, and yet with my eyes open as a witness, that fire turned to light. And it was as if the world was reborn in that. And that also was a visionary state. Now, again, I let it go. It didn't inform me in any particular way, but the fragrance of it kind of stayed with me. And in awakening, I recognized that both of those, and especially the second vision, which was more detailed, was actually the process of awakening. A sort of visual
Yeah.
representation of it, a metaphor. It's not literal, but that remaining as awareness itself is what transforms the darkness to light. Now, I also think it's not just personal; it's collective. so, so that reminds me of that.
Very beautiful. There's, there's, there's a question I want to come to, but first I want to just get into that a little bit. Is that the same? Because you've talked about going through the valley before, walking through the valley of, and so is that the same as that? And is that the same as some deeply archetypal, biblical, but not non-religious kind of vision that we hold inside ourselves, that is the perennial vision of Jesus and the Buddha enlightenment and all of this kind of stuff, that the holding true in the face of fear and destruction, and in that holding true to a deeper presence of openness and love, that the entire vision, the entire world dissolves and is reborn as something. Is this
Yes, absolutely. There we are. There. So there is a third part of it, and the third part of it was a long time later. I don't know, about 15 years later. It's like each visionary state was more detailed, yeah, and more precise. And yes, there was the walking through the valley of death, and I don't know whether we need to explore that right now, but it was a more detailed version of that. Was later, and it was actually very close to awakening. So they were kind of related. And yes, to just put it into its kind of right context, I would say that's archetypal. It's an archetype, exactly what you said. It's something archetypal in our in the human psyche, in the human genetic coding, that is being replayed, if you like, or manifest through individuals, like especially Christ is Jesus is the main one, but through each of us, and somehow you know we can be in touch with that. It can inform us. I don't know why it happens to some and not others, but it was a valuable, visceral, not informational, but visceral kind of opening in me. Yes, but I think that's very much the symbolism of it, the archetypal symbolism and possibility. So that's why I say it's intuitive. Yeah, we started off the conversation by saying it's an intuitive sense, not a theoretical
yeah.
understanding of what's happening on an evolutionary level. It's intuitive because it's been
No, yeah.
felt archetypally.
I understand that, and it's funny because I think that when one of the things in the long relationship, there are very many multi-layered, nuanced, and deeply profound aspects of the relationship that I've had with you, is that without actually kind of teaching me, if you like, directly, that particular kind of, I don't know, depth or quality, the quality of being this, it has become me, right? That's it's become me, and now I share in my sessions in whatever I do. It's that equanimity, what I call equanimity, the ability to stand at the fulcrum, at the center, where the cross is, if you like, without being religious again, but at the junction of where the horizontal world, where the world of time and form and past and present meets the depth of our and the height of our consciousness. And you've conveyed that to me completely, because that's actually the essence of the teaching, really. It's one of the essence of the teaching, and that makes it timeless, yeah?
Absolutely. I mean, there was no knowing that it would become the teaching or that's what would emerge. But that's really what's emerged many years later is actually the simplicity of that, not
Yeah.
the symbolism of it, not the imagery of it, not the archetypalness of it, even that, although we're talking about that a little bit now, but the simplicity of it, the simplicity of the capacity we each have to remain as presence, if you like, to remain as equanimity, to recognize the light of being that is ever present and unchanging within all experiences, whatever happens, whether the world is falling apart or whether the world is rebirthing itself, to remain as that, that's it. That is the evolution that's taking place. That is the personal evolution, and it is the potentially collective evolution, whether that means, we don't know what that means. We don't know what that looks like. And I would expect that it's not going to be a mass awakening where we go into some new world of perfection. It's going to be like a wave that takes place here and there. But certainly there's the potential for the individual, and with each individual, yeah, that light informs the way that we are in our relationships, in our lives, in our work, and that changes something on a fundamental level. And so here it is. It always points back to remain as this.
So there's so many things I could ask here. So the work is still individual work. The mirror is still pointing to the individual. I know there are beliefs, and it seems to be true of the hundredth monkey effect, if you like, that as the momentum of a meme or a thought or an energy or a belief or a change goes on in more and more and more people, so it actually becomes exponentially more possible. But I think, to rest on the laurels of I'll wait for everybody else to do the work and clear their shadow or whatever it is, until, so I don't really have to face my own darkness, whether that's my fear of the world or the horror of my past or whatever it is. It's not the time to kind of sit back. It is actually the time to really do what one might call the work. Yeah.
Absolutely. It's time for the individual to take responsibility for the inner state of consciousness. And I think that's what's different today than it was, say, 3,000, 4,000 years ago. It's almost like we didn't have the capacity to take responsibility for that. Maybe a few rare individuals, and we call them, the enlightened ones. But now I think the ordinary person has more capacity for that. It's more available to us to take responsibility for your state of consciousness. That's not to say that you can make awakening happen, but you can start to see more and more how one gives allegiance to the reactive mechanism, which includes fear, which includes resistance, which includes argument with what is, which brings us back to the primary teaching, if you like, which is the timeless one, which is the end of resistance. The end of resistance to what is, the end of the argument with what is, life as it is, not life as you hope it to be or think it to be or fear it to be, but just here as it is. That's timeless. It's the timeless wisdom.
May I ask you a question about yourself? You don't know what I'm going to ask. I want to ask this. This is actually related, but it's sort of, yeah, I just want to get a picture of this because you're actually what one might call a non-dual teacher. Non-duality seems to have a lot of, it's a broad brushstroke these days, whereas it used to be a very almost narrow brushstroke, and I think it's become somewhat kind of diluted in some ways. But I don't see yours as being kind of diluted. But Amoda, what I hear in what you've been just talking about and what we've been talking about is actually, and you alluded to it in the 90s, you had an inner vision. Now, and then you had another one, and then you had an awakening, and then after a time you became a non-dual teacher, and speaking about just this, the essence of us as the union and oneness that we are. But I also know you as an Aquarian, kind of almost mystic soul somehow, and I too am an Aquarian. We have a very kind of Aquarian way of being or talking. I'm going to say categorically that I know you as a visionary on a certain level. That has many connotations, but I think you do have a dream or a vision or something. But also you're a non-dualist. I hate that term, but I'm going to use it. So now let me ask you the question: how do these two things marry up and live with each other?
That's a good question. There's two aspects to the attempt to answer that as accurately and as honestly as possible. First of all, to me, they're not contradictory. As you said, the non-dual or non-duality has a very broad brushstroke these days, and much of it has been, or some of it has been hijacked by the extremist or fundamentalist non-dual perspective, which is there's nobody here, there's nothing happening, and there's no evolution. And then sticking to that. True non-duality does not exclude the movement of life, which includes everything. All levels, all dimensions, the archetypal, the symbolic, the metaphorical, all energy bodies, if you like. Jesus is ultimately non-dual, but he's not a modern day fundamentalist non-dualist. Yeah, it includes everything. Was he a mystic? Of course. Was he a visionary? Of course. And so on. So to me, they're not exclusive. I could point out some modern day teachers as well, but I won't. That also have this. Yeah. That's one side of the conversation, if you like, or the approach. The other side of the approach is that personally, I have never been attached to the visionary state. I have never taken it personally. I have never proclaimed myself to be a visionary or a mystic, and therefore to uphold that. In fact, I never speak about those visions. We're speaking to them here because they're part of the theme of today's conversation, and also because we have very intimate, honest conversations. So yeah, you can get really inside this human being as well. But I have never upheld that. I never speak about it. I don't even think about it. Like I said, it's just something that's developed and informed, but not held onto. So there's no identity of self in that. Therefore, it's not a problem. Ultimately, true awakening, true enlightenment, true liberation transcends all visions, all mystical states, all dimensions. It really is about the nakedness of what is. I mean, that's simplifying it, yeah, but just to bring it back to the raw bones of it, yeah, which is non-dual. It's the realization, the recognition that only the one beingness, the one light of being permeates everything and gives birth to everything. Everything arises in that. So as it's lived, as it's known, and as it's expressed through what we call the teaching, that's all it is. But that doesn't preclude the possibility of insight, intuition, even visionary states. I mean, I don't have visionary states
No.
anymore. But there are certain individuals, and I am, for whatever reason, one of those, who has quite a, I don't know why, I don't know what it is, but it's kind of got quite a, not fragile, but delicate boundary
Yeah. Skin.
in
Yeah.
mind,
Yeah.
in body, in every aspect of the human being. And therefore, energies which are everywhere, the collective, the the field, the cosmic, the galactic, the archetypal, the symbolic, are very available to me. And I've always been like that. It's just that it's not so much anymore. It's on a much more subtle level, and I don't speak about it and I don't identify with it. Yeah.
I think you, yeah, I appreciate you speaking to it because I know that I caught you in the headlights in a sense, but that's part of what this is. The purpose of this, in a way, is to see how, is it possible, for these two things, let's say, which aren't two things, to kind of coexist. And I think the key is that I don't think you've created any sort of identity or anything like that out of any of it, quite honestly, of the visionary or the mystic or anything like that. So therefore, the relationship, if it is a relationship between the non-dual and the mystic or the visionary, can float in and out, in a very harmonious way, in a very,
I mean, ultimately non-dual realization is the undoing of all identities.
yeah,
Does that preclude the every single experience that's possible? No. But there's no need for an experience to bring some sort of elevated mystical state or special state or spiritual state. I mean, I don't have those anymore. There's nothing here but what is. But that doesn't preclude a sensitivity
no,
to the waves of invisible movement, whether they're cyclical or spiraling through time and space. There's still a sensitivity to that. It's just very delicate now and very, yeah,
I do
visible.
believe, I do think that, as one cleans up, for want of a better term, one's temple, the temple of one's being, and I think you've always, in many ways, been a clean person. I don't mean that in any moral or pure way, in that sense, but actually your vessel, the individuation that you are has actually always been relatively clean. And I know for myself that the more clean on the internal level, and I mean really with the detritus of self-identification and toxic emotions and toxic foods and all that kind of stuff, the more clean the temple is, the more available one is for the cosmic information, for the natural intelligence. And I think you've always had a kind of capacity to touch what you're saying. You're very porous, and that could be a personal problem for some people. And it does render one open to all sorts of energies that, you know, so you have to be mature in that sense to be able to navigate that kind of, you know, porousness. But I've noticed that the cleaner that I've become, the more open I've become to what's, because we haven't got a boundary. We think we've got a boundary, but we haven't got a boundary. Our information and our intelligence and our awareness goes beyond this physical boundary. Correct?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
think that's what it is. We're open to, because of that porousness, or, you know, unboundedness, unboundariness, again, mental, physical, in all ways, just energetic, to be informed by the field. There's always an invisible field. And that's what we're sensing, but not to make a theory out of it, or a certainty out of it,
A
or an
certainty.
identity
Yeah.
out of it,
Yeah.
or a hope out of it, or a fear out of it.
God.
I'm not hoping for a better world. On some level, I couldn't care less. Yeah, yeah, I'm not hoping for a better world. It's not my responsibility to control the future or the world. Yeah, but I can be in tune with it, aligned with it, and therefore one with it, and yeah, and therefore just sense, intuit that there's something, yeah, there's something
That's a
potential here.
That's an amazing, actually, that's an amazing place to end. I think we'll end, but I think that's an amazing dance to have, to realize actually we think we're these human beings in this, encased in this body, but actually we're galactic consciousness already. We really are. And the more we strip away the veils of illusion, the more we realize and remember our true galactic, you know, cosmic consciousness. But the point is that as soon as that funnels up into the mind and becomes a future hope or a dream or an idea, we've lost it again. And so that relates back to what you were saying about staying as this. Yeah.
Yes, and so it also relates to where we started this conversation. Is as soon as we have hope of a better future, or saving the world, or transcending, or the fifth dimension, or whatever it is, it becomes about the self. The self hoping, dreaming of a better future. And already we have moved away from the possibility of true awakening out of the dream spell and the true evolution of consciousness, which is the non-dual. Yeah, so it's not about that. We have to be very careful, or, you know, I'm talking collectively here. um, that's why it's not about the self. It's not about my future or my world or what I can do to make it better and so on. It's not about the me. But the self, the individuation, the seeming finite self that is here, is absolutely vital, because it's through the portal, through that focal point, that the bigger, the totality, the beingness, the galactic, the consciousness can actually awaken to itself. But it's not for the self. That's the evolution.
The call is then to actually radical presence and radical here-ness,
Radical presence, radical here-ness, but not for the self.
but not for the
To
self.
recognize the light of awareness, the light of being that is the ever-present, unchanging reality, whatever appearance takes place.
Isn't this Buddha under the Bodhi tree?
It's Jesus on the cross. It's enlightenment.
Yeah. I think we're gonna finish there. I hope this has opened up something for anybody listening. It you know, it's only our attempt in a way to open the door, to keep the door open. Yeah, to keep the door of possibility, of the unknown, of the invitation, the perennial invitation to be rooted in the presence of being, not for the self, but for the unself, for the non-self, for the openness that we are. That's the intention here, and if it's spoken to you, I'm very pleased. Amoda, our conversations are extraordinarily delightful, and I hope that we've spoken to it in a way that works. Yeah,
I think we've touched on something.
good. Well, I did want to get to some other aspects of it, like the talking about the yugas we were going to talk about, and so I don't know. You never know. We might do something else, or I might invite you back to talk a little bit more about this, because it's quite useful, I think, and it reassures people that it's not just going wrong. It's not all a disaster. Actually, it's the darkness is there for good purpose. In many ways, if enlightenment or awakening or deepening is what we really seek. Having said that, thank you so much, Amoda.
Thank you, Kavi.
Okay, we'll see you again on the Conversations with Amoda Maa. Have a good day. May you be blessed. May you be well. Take care. Bye-bye.